We all know that feeling, right? That little spark,
Hmm.
uh, intrigue when you hear something that bucks the official story.
Yeah.
Was the moon landing faked? What really happened with 9/11? Conspiracy theories, they're like a constant hum in the background of our culture.
They really are. And while, they often get dismissed or maybe sensationalized, we thought it would be really valuable to step back
Mm-hmm.
and explore what philosophy actually has to say about them. Our mission today isn't to debunk or confirm any specific theory,
Right.
but to take a deep dive into the underlying philosophical questions they raise. Questions about knowledge, science, society, even ethics.
Exactly. And we're lucky we've got this incredible source material, a real philosophical roadmap
Hmm.
called Teorías da Conspiración.
Yeah, it's great.
It breaks down the philosophical thinking on this topic in a super structured way,
Yeah.
almost like a guided tour through the key debates.
Precisely. And we're going to follow that structure, starting with the, surprisingly tricky question of how to even define a conspiracy theory. Then we'll look at the different kinds that exist, delve into the philosophical criteria for, believing one, touch on their impact on society, and finally, consider how we should respond to them. Our goal is really to equip listeners with a clearer understanding of how to think critically about these ideas.
Not just dismiss them out of hand.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the definition. Because the moment you say conspiracy theory, it feels like you're already putting it in a certain box, right?
That's a really crucial observation.
Like it's automatically seen as something fringe or, unbelievable.
Yeah, in everyday language, the term definitely carries those negative connotations, but philosophically, we need to start with something more neutral.
To allow for proper analysis.
Right. So a minimal, widely accepted definition is simply a theory that identifies a conspiracy, a secret plan by a group, as a central cause of some event.
So at its core, it's just about a secret plot by some people.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Pretty much. Brian Keeley added a slight nuance, defining it as an explanation for an event based on the secret actions of a small group.
Oh, okay. Why small?
Well, that small group part is his way of maybe distinguishing it from, say, large-scale systemic things that might not involve intentional secrecy by a specific bunch of actors.
That makes sense. So the small group aspect focuses us on intentional secret actions. Is that the key insight there?
Absolutely. It helps narrow down what we're actually talking about. Now, other philosophers have debated whether other things should be part of the definition.
Like what?
Things like whether the group needs to be powerful or if their intentions have to be, harmful or nefarious.
Right. The more you add, the more specific and potentially judgmental the definition gets.
Precisely. Think about the stronger definitions you sometimes see, like maybe the Wikipedia entry, which often mentions powerful, sinister actors and suggests the conspiracy explanation is less likely than others.
It's a very different starting point than the neutral one.
Totally different.
So why do philosophers tend to prefer that minimal, less loaded definition?
Well, as Duntith explains, the fundamental elements of a conspiracy, in a neutral philosophical sense, are really just a group conspiring, secrecy, and a shared goal.
That's the core.
That's the core. This lets us analyze the structure of the explanation itself without immediately prejudging its validity,
Gotcha. It's like dissecting the anatomy of the theory before deciding if it's a healthy idea or not. Exactly.
Exactly. Mendick offers an even more detailed breakdown. He lists 5 necessary conditions for something to be a conspiracy theory.
5.
Yeah. It has to explain historical events through the intentional actions of multiple agents, the conspirators, who intended those events to happen and kept both their intentions and their actions secret. He sees these as the absolute bare minimum.
Intentionality and secrecy. Those seem to be the consistent threads here.
They are indeed. Now, Cody offers another interesting angle.
Oh.
He defines conspiracy theories as explanations that stand in opposition to the official explanation of an event at a particular time.
So it's about its relationship to the accepted narrative.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that official accounts themselves can involve conspiracies.
Wait, how?
Think about a government investigation uncovering a secret plot that's an official account of a conspiracy.
So the label isn't just for the outsider's perspective.
Right. And this really highlights why the choice of definition matters so much. Take Watergate.
Okay.
By a loaded definition, maybe it's not a conspiracy theory now because, it was confirmed. But when the allegations first surfaced, under our minimal definition, it absolutely was.
Okay, yeah.
Conversely, explaining a surprise party involves a small group, secret actions, a shared goal,
A surprise party is a conspiracy theory. That's funny, but it really drives home the point about starting neutral.
Exactly. And then we have this term conspiracionismo. It's
Right.
not just about individual theories, but the broader phenomenon.
Right, the sort of theorizing itself.
Yeah. Bipe saw it as a form of paranoid thinking, but Muirhead and Rosenblum, they view it as an evolving aspect of political culture.
Evolving.
They differentiate between classic conspiracionismo, which, tries to offer an alternative explanation.
Here's what really happened.
Right. And what they call new conspirationism, which often seems less about explaining and more about simply asserting or insinuating a conspiracy just to undermine trust in opponents.
Ah, so it's shifted from explanation to delegitimization. That's a pretty significant change in the game.
It really is. Okay, so now that we have a more nuanced idea of what we're even talking about, let's move on to the different types of conspiracy theories.
Right, because it's not just one big blob of crazy ideas.
Definitely not. You wouldn't put a theory about, Elvis still being alive in the same category as one about, say, 9/11 being an inside job.
Exactly. There have to be ways to categorize them.
Absolutely. Typologies help bring some order. Reika, for instance, offers a basic but useful split, political versus non-political theories.
Okay.
Theories about celebrity deaths like Jim Morrison or Elvis, those often fall into the non-political category. More about cultural fascination, maybe.
Okay, so it's about the subject matter, political or not.
Exactly. And within the political realm, Reika breaks them down further by scale. Local, global, and total, depending on how widespread the alleged conspiracy is supposed to be.
Local, global, total.
Got it. Then Hahnemann and Worms provide a more detailed set of categories. They distinguish between scientific and non-scientific theories.
Example.
The conspiracy theory around the origins of AIDS might be an example of a scientific one because it makes claims that directly contradict established scientific understanding.
So one engages with scientific claims, the other operates kind of outside that.
Precisely. They also differentiate between ideological theories where a pre-existing belief system, like maybe anti-Semitism, provides the framework, and more neutral ones. Then there's the distinction between official conspiracy theories. Yes, governments can have their own theories about conspiracy.
Right, like uncovering a spy ring or something.
Exactly. And anti-institutional ones, like many 9/11 theories challenging the official government account. And finally, they separate alternative explanations, which offer a different causal story, from outright denials, which just claim the event never even happened.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive way of looking at it. The world of conspiracy theories is surprisingly diverse.
It really is. And Clark adds another interesting layer. He looks at the theoretical nature of these explanations.
How so?
He suggests some are really just proto-theories, ideas not yet fully developed into something coherent and testable.
Like a first draft of a theory?
Kind of. Others, he argues, might be seen as degenerating research programs using Licado's idea from philosophy of science.
Okay, remind me what that means again.
It's like a scientific theory that keeps adding extra bits, ad hoc explanations, just to avoid being disproven, instead of making new, successful predictions.
Ah, right. Constantly making excuses instead of discovering new things. And he thought the Elvis death conspiracy was like that.
Exactly. Not leading to any new, verifiable discoveries about Elvis, post-funeral. He contrasted this with Watergate, which did lead to new revelations. He even suggested some theories, like the 9/11 controlled demolition idea, might still be in that proto-theory stage, not fully cooked yet.
Interesting. But didn't someone disagree?
Yes. Pigden was critical. He argued Clark didn't provide enough evidence for applying Lakatos's framework here, and pointed to historically accepted conspiracies as counterexamples.
So the jury's out on that one.
Yeah.
But the core ideas, is the theory generating new insights or just explaining away problems?
Exactly. It's a useful question to ask.
Okay, so we've got definitions, we've got types. Now we get to the really crucial question. When should we actually believe a conspiracy theory?
Great. The big one.
Because the knee-jerk reaction for many is probably never. But the philosophers we're looking at seem to suggest a more nuanced approach.
That's a really important point. The philosophical literature generally advises against just dismissing all conspiracy theories out of hand. It's more complicated than that.
So how do they approach it?
Well, the discussion around belief often starts from a realist viewpoint. The idea that our theories should aim to reflect the actual truth about the world.
As opposed to,
say, instrumentalist views, where a theory is valuable if it helps us make good predictions, or pragmatic views, which focus more on the practical consequences of believing it.
So for these philosophers, the main question is the conspiracy theory true? not just useful or comforting.
Exactly. And within this realist framework, they've put forward various criteria for evaluating them. The first set comes from philosophy of science methodological criteria.
Okay, methods. Lay them on us. What makes a theory methodologically sound or unsound?
Okay, first up, internal flaws, C1. Basham argues we should be skeptical of theories that suffer from these.
Such as?
Things like contradictions within the theory itself, big gaps in the explanation, relying on really improbable motives, suggesting unrealistic psychology, making dodgy technological claims without backup, conflicting with facts we already agree on, or making predictions that just don't pan out. Reika offers a similar list.
That seems pretty logical. If the story itself doesn't add up or contradicts known facts, that's a big red flag.
Precisely. Basham uses the example of the theory claiming Hitler was the Antichrist, predicted in Revelation.
Okay.
The fact that Hitler died and the world didn't end as prophesied. That suggests a pretty major failed prediction, an internal flaw.
Right. Makes sense.
Now, it's worth noting, what counts as strictly internal can be debated. Some might say only logical contradictions count, while other things Basham lists are maybe separate issues.
Okay, so internal consistency is key for C1. What's the next methodological tool?
Next is progress, C2. This links back to Clarke's idea about research programs. Is the theory part of a progressive program?
Meaning, does it make new, successful predictions?
Exactly. Or is it degenerating, just getting tweaked to fit old evidence without leading anywhere new?
And Clarke thought most conspiracy theories were degenerating, like the Elvis one, never finding new info.
That was his view, yeah.
Yeah.
He held up Watergate as potentially progressive because it spurred investigation and uncovered new stuff. But remember, Pigden pushed back, saying Clarke didn't really prove his case, and that historical conspiracies that were confirmed are counterexamples.
So the question for this criterion is the theory opening up new lines of inquiry, or just patching holes?
You got it. Is it moving forward or just going in circles?
Okay. Third methodological criterion.
The third is inference to the best explanation, C3, or IBE. Dentith argues we should evaluate conspiracy theories like any other explanation, using a process similar to how scientists or detectives build a case, weighing the evidence, comparing different possible stories. He suggests a framework kind of like Bayesian reasoning.
Bayesian? That involves prior probability, right? How likely something seems initially.
Yeah, roughly. It's about considering the initial plausibility alongside the evidence, and Dentith argues we often underestimate how frequently conspiracies have actually happened historically, which might lead us to unfairly dismiss conspiracy theories as inherently improbable from the get-go.
That's an interesting thought. Maybe we have a bias against the idea of secret plots just because they sound dramatic, even though history's full of them.
Could be. Then there's the issue of selecting evidence. Hepfer warns against selective coherentism, just focusing on evidence that fits your theory.
Cherry picking.
Basically. But Dentith counters that all theories, even scientific ones, involve some selection of what evidence is deemed most relevant, like historians choosing sources.
So it's not automatically a flaw if a conspiracy theory highlights certain evidence. All explanations do that. The key is whether the selection is justified and how contradictory evidence is handled.
Exactly. And Keeley adds a crucial point about the lack of evidence.
Okay.
While absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, if we'd expect to find certain evidence if a conspiracy were real, and repeated, diligent searches don't find it, that can weaken the theory.
Right. If there should be a smoking gun and there isn't one after looking hard.
That matters. He also explains why falsifiability, being able to prove a theory wrong, isn't generally a great criterion here.
Why not?
Because the whole point of a secret plot is that disproving evidence might be deliberately hidden. You can't easily falsify something that's designed to be concealed.
Okay, so for C3, we're looking at overall explanatory power, evidence fit, the significance of missing evidence, and understanding the limits of falsifiability for secrets. What's the last methodological one?
The last in this category is rogue data, C4. This is Keeley's term for bits of info that seem to contradict the official story.
Anomalies.
Yeah.
Stuff that doesn't fit.
Yeah. He argues conspiracy theories often latch onto this rogue data as key evidence. He acknowledges anomalies are important in science too, but warns against automatically assuming this rogue data is accurate or significant just because it challenges the mainstream account.
So just because a detail doesn't fit the official story doesn't automatically mean the conspiracy theory is right.
Exactly. Both Clarke and Dentith are pretty skeptical of Keeley's argument here. Clarke says what counts as rogue depends on which theory you already accept. And Dentith argues basically all theories have some data that doesn't quite fit. He uses JFK witnesses hearing extra shots as rogue data for the official theory,
Okay.
and the bin Laden video claiming responsibility for 9/11 as rogue data for some 9/11 conspiracy theories. The point is to analyze the rogue data for all competing explanations.
That makes a lot of sense. Methodological rigor is crucial, same as for any explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears. Motives. This seems really key. Cui bono. Who benefits?
Absolutely. Our second category of criteria focuses on motives, and the first one is indeed cui bono, C5, who benefit.
Perfect.
Hepfer uses the JFK assassination again. Oswald's the official shooter, but various theories point to others, the CIA, the mafia, whoever, and crucially argue they had a motive.
Right. You identify potential plotters and ask what was in it for them.
Precisely. Hepfer argues a credible theory should clearly state the conspirators' motives and goals, and the conspiracy's success should logically advance those goals. Theories get shaky when motives are vague, or contradict what we know about the people involved, or if the outcome wouldn't actually help them.
Seems like common sense. A conspiracy to achieve something the plotters don't want. Pretty far-fetched.
Yeah.
What's next for motives?
Next is individual background, C6. This looks at trust in a couple of ways. First, trust in the motives of the person proposing the theory.
Ah, the source.
Yeah, Reike emphasizes this. Do they have a hidden agenda? Political, financial, like maybe climate change deniers promoting theories because it serves their interests?
Or maybe someone dismissing a theory because they're biased.
Exactly. We need to consider who's presenting the theory and why. The second aspect is trust in epistemic authority. Levy discusses this.
Epistemic authority. Experts.
Yeah. He takes a social view of knowledge. Since knowledge creation is complex, collaborative, involves experts, any theory contradicting the broad expert consensus is, he says, prima facie unjustified.
Basically, trust the experts unless you have really strong reasons not to.
That's Levy's view, pretty much. But Dentith raises counterpoints.
Such as?
Well, many big conspiracy theories cross disciplines. Who are the experts then? Also, official view doesn't automatically mean correct view. And experts can have biases or motives to deceive too, right? Especially if funding's involved. And ultimately, our trust in experts often depends on our trust in the institutions behind them.
Which leads us right to the next point. Institutional trust. C7. Keeley argues a basic problem with many conspiracy theories is they undermine trust in the very institutions we rely on for infoscience, media, government.
Right. Believing in a big conspiracy often implies you distrust those foundations. And he, along with Cody, suggests theories might get more traction where institutional trust is already low.
Makes sense.
However, Basham offers a different take. Studied agnosticism. He questions assuming institutions are always trustworthy, warns against a circular argument, dismissing a theory just because it contradicts an institution we assume is reliable.
So we can't just say, well, the government says X, so any theory against that is wrong,
Right.
because the theory might be about the government being wrong or deceptive.
Exactly. And Clark and Reike challenge Keeley's link between believing one conspiracy and generalized distrust. They say often skepticism is specific. Watergate shook trust in Nixon's team, not necessarily all government.
Okay.
Though Reike does concede that really broad theories, like flat Earth, probably do imply more widespread distrust.
Okay, motives are clearly complex. We've got who benefits, source bias, expert authority, and institutional trust. Now, what about these other realist criteria? Sounds like a mixed bag.
It is a bit. Our third realist category covers several other factors for evaluating if a theory is likely true. First, the fundamental attribution error, C8.
Psychology concept, right?
Yeah. Our tendency to overemphasize people's intentions or character dispositional factors and underestimate situations when explaining their behavior. Clark suggests conspiracy theories often do this.
How?
They focus on deliberate plots, Elvis faking death dispositional, while official accounts might cite circumstances, Elvis dying from health issues situational.
So conspiracy theories lean towards blaming plots over just stuff happening.
That's the idea. But Dentith pushes back. Are conspiracy theories always more dispositional? He points to 9/11. The official account heavily involves the hijacker's intentions, dispositional.
Good point.
And Pigden critiques the FAE research itself, arguing conspiracies do happen, so maybe focusing only on situations is wrong sometimes. Cody even doubts the FAE exists.
Okay, so the idea that conspiracy theories are uniquely flawed by this bias is debatable. Next realist criterion.
Next is ontology, C9, basically what the theory claims exists. Hepfer notes some theories posit really unusual things.
Like?
Like the phantom time hypothesis claims whole centuries of history were faked, or that perpetual motion machines exist but are suppressed.
Wow, those are big claims.
Exactly. Hepfer says the more extraordinary the existence claims, the more skeptical we should be. Accepting them means throwing out huge chunks of accepted knowledge. This ontological baggage needs very strong evidence.
Makes sense. A theory rewriting physics needs more proof than one about, say, local corruption. What's next?
The Übermensch C10 idea. Hepfer and Reike observe some theories give conspirators almost superhuman powers. Omnipotence. Omniscience.
Like the Illuminati secretly controlling everything perfectly.
Exactly. Controlling the world economy, manipulating all events. Plus, they're often demonized as purely evil.
Right, the shadowy figures who are unbelievably competent and totally malevolent, like comic book villains.
Pretty much. And the more extraordinary the power is attributed, the less credible it seems. Real humans, even in groups, just aren't that powerful or perfectly coordinated.
Okay, be wary of theories needing godlike villains. Final realist criterion.
The final one here is scale, C11, the size and duration of the alleged conspiracy. The common argument from Hepfer, Keeley, even Grimes' simulations on secrecy is that bigger conspiracies lasting longer are less likely. More people involved means more risk of leaks over time.
It's like the saying, 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
Exactly that kind of logic. However, Basham counters that strong hierarchies and control in large organizations might actually enable big, long conspiracies. Oh.
And Dentith also pushes back on the simple, bigger, less likely idea. He argues even in big institutions, maybe only a few really know the details, he questions if Grimes' simulations really apply well here.
So the idea that probability just drops with scale isn't universally accepted. Even huge conspiracies aren't automatically impossible.
Right. It depends on the structure and control mechanisms.
Okay. We've covered realist criteria about truth, but there are non-realist views too.
Yes. Our last category looks at non-realist criteria. First is instrumentalism, C12. Greel argues some people might use conspiracy theories instrumentally.
Meaning?
Not necessarily believing they're literally true, but using them as an as-if framework to understand a complex, opaque world and maybe make decent predictions.
So they might not think a secret cabal literally runs the Eurozone, but thinking as if it's managed for wealthy banks helps them make sense of decisions. Precisely.
Yeah.
It might not be a literal description, but it could offer a useful lens for analysis, maybe even predict outcomes surprisingly well. Grewal says how we evaluate theories depends on what we think theories should do.
So is the goal truth, or is understanding, even metaphorical understanding, valuable too? Interesting shift. Last criterion.
Final one, pragmatism, C13. This focuses on the consequences of belief or disbelief, not the truth value.
How does that work?
Basham argues for pragmatically rejecting most conspiracy theories because finding the truth is often super hard and the constant suspicion can be damaging personally and socially. Reike echoes this. Maybe focusing on unfounded negativity isn't great for personal well-being.
So even if a theory could be true, maybe it's better for us, individually and collectively, not to buy into it.
That's one angle. But Reike also notes our responsibility might differ based on our role. A journalist might have a pragmatic duty to investigate certain claims with public impact. Muirhead and Rosenblum, focusing on politics, argue leaders have pragmatic reasons to oppose theories promoting hate, undermining legitimate opposition, or eroding expertise.
Okay.
Reike also says intervention might be needed if theories involve defamation or hate speech. He gives a balanced view potential positives of theorizing, like accountability,
Right.
alongside the negatives, like eroding trust and increasing division.
So it's a societal cost-benefit analysis plus an individual one.
Yeah.
What are some of those broader social and political effects philosophers highlight?
Yeah, Reike and Moore look closely at these, linking back to pragmatism and theory types. Positives. Sometimes they uncover real conspiracies, Watergate, right?
A classic example.
They can hold institutions accountable, maybe foster critical thinking, push for transparency, kind of paradoxically.
The idea that questioning authority, even via conspiracy theory, can sometimes force better response. Interesting.
It is. But the negative effects are significant, more widely discussed. Erosion of trust in institutions, think anti-vax theories and public health.
Big one.
The danger of sliding towards relativism, post-truth, as Muirhead and Rosenblum warn. Increased polarization, populism, links to racism or prejudice. And Popper worried they misdirect us from real causes of social problems, hindering effective action.
So, while occasional good can come, the potential for serious societal harm seems dominant.
That's often the concern. Bjerg and Preskorn-Thygesen even argue conspiracy theories create a kind of state of exception in discourse.
So
Like terrorism in politics, normal rules of evidence get suspended, justifying irrational responses, marginalizing believers. They call it epistemic terrorism, attacking shared reality.
wow. Epistemic terrorism, that's a powerful phrase. So given all this, what should we actually do about them, especially governments or politicians?
Good question. This shifts from individual belief to societal response. Sunstein and Vermeule explored options: prohibition, taxing them, counterspeech, even cognitive infiltration.
Cognitive infiltration sounds iffy.
Yeah, they largely dismissed prohibition and taxing as against free speech. Infiltration meant government agents maybe anonymously joining online groups to introduce diverse views.
That sounds really problematic.
Definitely raises huge ethical flags. Cody strongly objected. Government deception to fight deception, pragmatically inconsistent, likely to backfire, fuel more distrust.
Yeah, the cure sounds worse than the disease there.
Probably. Muirhead and Rosenblum argue political leaders should actively challenge theories promoting hate, illegitimately attacking opponents, or undermining expertise. They advocate for strong democratic norms against new conspirationism. Ultimately, the consensus seems to be the response needs tailoring. Specific theory, specific context, potential harms, no one-size-fits-all fix.
That seems very sensible.
Yeah.
Can't have a blanket policy for something so varied. Now, before we wrap up, philosophy isn't the only game in town here, right? Other fields study this too.
Absolutely. Philosophy gives a crucial framework for concepts and evaluation, but it's just one piece. Psychology studies conspiratorial thinking, why people believe.
Right.
History gives us context, endless examples. Sociology looks at group dynamics, targeting of minorities. Ushinsky's work is a great interdisciplinary overview.
So it's truly a multifaceted area, needing insights from lots of disciplines. Well, this has been incredibly insightful.
I hope so.
We started with that common fascination, and hopefully listeners now have a much richer, more nuanced way to think about conspiracy theories philosophically.
Yeah.
We've navigated definitions, types, and a whole toolkit of criteria, methodological, motivational, pragmatic for evaluating them critically, plus the social impact and responses.
Indeed. The key takeaway: philosophical analysis pushes us beyond just dismissing or accepting. It encourages thoughtful, critical engagement. No easy answers.
So as you encounter these theories out there, maybe pause and reflect. Which criteria resonate? How do these lenses help assess the claims?
And that brings us to our final thought for you. Could this very act, dissecting conspiracy theories philosophically, applying reason, could it ultimately strengthen our trust in established knowledge? Or maybe, could it inadvertently weaken it? Something to keep thinking about.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.